Welcome to Writing Content for Websites and Blogs. I'm Talora and I'm from King Thing Marketing. You've probably seen me on one of the other videos before, but just in case you haven't heard of King Thing, we're a marketing agency based in Launceston. We build websites, we manage social media accounts, we write strategy, we have a graphic designer, and most importantly on today's topic, we write lots of content. So we write content for a whole variety of reasons. Some of those reasons are social media, some are websites, some are blog posts, and some are even email newsletters. So there's a whole array of topics that we can cover when it comes to writing content, but today we're going to specifically focus in on websites and blogs. So I'm here today because of the Digital Ready program. The Digital Ready program is a fantastic initiative by the Department of State Growth that enables any business in Tasmania to 2 hours free mentoring or coaching every calendar year. If you haven't already had your session for the year, I'd highly advise you to book in your session coming up soon. The other great thing about the Digital Ready program is this wonderful website that's behind me. The website has a load of resources available for you to access at any time, including presentations like this one. There's a whole range of new ones coming out, so keep an eye out for those when they are coming live. We also have a range of blog posts, podcasts, and fact sheets for you to sort through in your own time and by topic. So definitely worth checking out. So we'll get started with the first chapter, and that's looking at content basics. So firstly, let's have a look at what is content. So content can come in 4 different forms. So we've got our written content, we've got our images, we've got our video, and we've got our collateral. All these types of content represent our business, so we need to make sure that they're consistent across all of our channels. Good content should be really engaging, on brand, and resonate with your target audience. In order to do this, we need to follow 4 simple steps. The first is looking at how we can use our content to increase our brand awareness. So we want to make sure that whatever we put out there, our brand is immediately recognized by that piece of content. There's no point having a mixture of different images, of different videos, if people can't recognize that that's our brand or our business that is associated with that piece of content. So we need to make sure that consistency flows through and so that people can recognize our brand immediately. We know now that it takes at least 14 times for somebody to see our brand to remember it. So if we're putting out heaps of different types of content with different tones of voices and different imagery that doesn't resonate, then they're not going to get totally confused and not sure if it does actually represent our brand. So make sure that we're being really consistent with that so we can increase our brand awareness and get people to learn who we are faster. So hopefully it doesn't take that 14 times for them to remember who we are. The second thing is that good content should tell a story. Now you probably have heard this before, but telling a story is super important because it's what makes your business you, it's what makes your business unique. And so we want to make sure that we tell our story in that content. We don't want to just be putting out facts and figures. We want to make sure that we connect with people. We want to tell people why we got to that particular decision to use that product, why we do our services this way. If we can tell that story and weave it in there with those facts and figures and information that we do need to still share, it's such a more powerful way to connect with our audience. The third thing is we want to build trust with our content. There's no point having pieces of content out there if they're just put out there for nobody to really understand or really connect with. We want to make sure that people feel like when they read it, they can really see the sincerity in what we're writing, and then they develop that trust with us. If people develop trust, they're more likely to purchase your product or use your service. The fourth thing is make sure that you get creative. It's completely okay to do some things that stand out from the crowd. I mean, if we didn't, how else would we make sure that we stand out over our competitors? So don't be afraid to get creative or change things up every now and again. The other thing to consider when you're looking at your brand is in your images and in your videos. So we want to make sure when we are picking images and we're using different videos that the people that we have featured in those, they resonate with our target audience. There's no point having people in those images or in those videos if they don't work with the people that are in who you're trying to reach in those target markets. People want to see people enjoying an experience that they can relate to. So if they sit back and see somebody who looks very similar to themselves in those images, they're more likely to be like, okay, actually, I want to go on that piece of a tour, or I want to go and experience that. The other thing that we want to do is make sure that it's a way for our business to be immediately recognized. So I've said that already a little bit with that branding consistency before, but again, that relates to our images and our videos. It also represents our business values. So we want to make sure that the images and the videos that we pick are ones that align with making sure that our values are being showcased through them. If they feel like they're not quite right for your brand, then they're probably not, and I would recommend getting something else and changing the photography up just so that you don't feel like people are seeing those and not connecting with it or not feeling like it represents what you're trying to convey. The other thing is that your brand in videos and images delivers a message about your product or service. You need to make sure that that message is quite clear in those images and videos. If it's the product or service is pushed back or it's too far into the video for nobody to really understand that that's the key part of why we're shooting this video, then we need to think about how we can move that forward and make it more of a prominent position in that image or video. And lastly, a little bit like the Get Creative tip, do things that set you apart from the rest. Don't just take a beautiful, iconic shot that anybody could take. Take something that's really different and captivates people's attention. So something that I've mentioned a couple of times now is target market. So each of us might have one or two target markets that we're ideally trying to reach with our product or service. So whenever we're writing any forms of content, it's really important that we're talking directly to those target markets. So we need to, if you haven't already, identify who our target markets are and then look at all the things that they like to consume and how they like to be spoken to. There's no point using different words that don't relate to that target market because they will just get disinterested and not continue reading it. So we want to make sure that we have things that are compelling and really articulate to our target audience that that's who we're trying to speak with. Now, I understand this can be quite difficult if you do have multiple target markets, and that's when it can come down to the individual platforms that you're using to target the specific target markets. So for example, if you have an older demographic and a younger demographic, and you're using Facebook to communicate with that older demographic, you can use more of a formal type of language. But on Instagram, where you're trying to communicate with a younger demographic, that's where you can use things that are a little bit more quirky, a little bit more, I guess, different, that resonates with that particular target audience. The most important thing is just to find a balance that works for your brand and your business. So once you've identified your target market and you understand all the things that they like to do and how they like to be spoken to, that's where we can make sure we really nut out the tone of voice that we are going to use and make sure it's consistent across all of our channels. There's no point having a different tone of voice on every single different channel or on every single page of our website because the overall user will be completely confused. We need to have one clear tone of voice, and there can be those little sub ones for those individual platforms, but it still needs to have a key focus when it comes to the content overall. If you do get stuck when you're creating a tone of voice, it can be worthwhile just popping onto Google and having a look at a tone of voice chart. These charts are really great for identifying where we want our business to sit on the different categories and makes it really clear if there are multiple people who are running or writing pieces of content for your business, that this is the tone of voice that you're wanting to have in that business. So just worth having a look at. Lastly, whenever we're writing any piece of content, we want to think about the overall goals of that content. So why are we writing this content? There's no point writing a piece of content if we have absolutely no idea what it is for. We need to be very clear in what our direction is with that piece of content. So what is the absolute goal? So each time you write something, start with the goal. Start with why am I doing this? And then work backwards and you'll be able to write a much more clear piece of content. So just a couple of quick writing tips. Whenever you are writing content for a business, it's best to always say you, we, our, us instead of I. Even if you are a one-man business, it gives that sense that there's more than one person there to look after you and you're a bit of a collective and you're working in force with your customer. You're not working just as an I team. The second thing is to always write for your customer. Make sure that the content is very focused on them. Build up the problem that they might be facing and then come in as the solution with your business. If we make it all about ourselves, people can be turned off from that and then they might not purchase our product or use our service. Again, be consistent. I can't stress this one enough. It is so important to be consistent, and I'll show some examples a little bit later on, but being consistent is key to making sure that our content stands out from everybody else, but it also works for our business and works in increasing our sales and opportunities that we have. And the last thing is avoid keyword stuffing. So when we come and talk about websites a little bit later on, I'll talk about keywords in a little bit more depth, but basically with the keywords, when we are writing content pieces, we can get into a phase where we start to add those keywords on a repetitive basis because we think that's what the Google spiders want to see. That's not the case, and when a user comes to read it, they'll be quite annoyed because they'll know that you're keyword stuffing as you've used the sentence or the keyword phrase at least 5 times in one paragraph. Ultimately, we want to make sure that when we are writing something that the user's not going to be bored and they're going to make sure that it flows nicely for them to articulate when they're reading it. So now we're going to look at some different content tips. So I'm going to start with some image tips. So where we can, try and use real photos. If you are looking at a business and you see that they're using stock standard images, sometimes you feel a little bit put off because you can't connect with those images as much as you would like to, or you don't get a sense of that overall business by looking at those images. So if you can, invest in getting a photographer to take some really great images, or as most of us have a really great smartphone, just start taking photos using the portrait mode on that camera and you will start to develop some great photos that are ready for websites and ready for social media. Think about with your website that most people view a website on a mobile device. In fact, 69% of us do now. So it's important that when we are taking those images, we think about taking them in portrait mode, not just landscape mode. And lastly, make sure that you have your target market featured in those photos. I have said it before, but really important because it will make sure that it resonates with them. Make sure that you get creative. So if it suits your target market, use fun words, use fun imagery. It'll really stand out from the crowd, but also makes them feel a sense of, well, this is a cool place to be associated with, or this is a cool place that we could get our services with, and that's what we want to have in our business. So think about what you're trying to achieve with that content, and if you're being a bit more fun and creative, it's going to show that you guys are a fun workplace or you are a fun business. An example that I've used in the next couple of slides is GoTo Skincare. They're one of my favorite examples for using in this type of sense because they are super clever at being very on brand and being consistent in all of their channels, but they're so good at being fun. They're a bit witty with their content writing, and for those of you who haven't heard of the business, it's owned by Zoe Foster Blake, which is Hamish Blake's wife. So comedy is quite a strong point in their household. So they love to put in little jokes and little witty one-liners into their content that really works. They also pick images that are a little bit different and have a little bit more fun with their skincare products, because at the end of the day, they are just a skincare product, but they stand out because they are doing something that's a little bit different to what's already in the marketplace. Again, be consistent. I've used this example again of GoTo Skincare because they are really good at being consistent. If you look at their Instagram channel to their Facebook page through to their website, you'll see the same pastel colours being used on repeat. You'll see that everything lines up. So whenever they have one picture of a product, you're going to see that same picture of that product on Instagram. You're going to see that same picture on Facebook. It just all flows nicely so that no matter what piece of collateral you go to next, you're going to see the same thing, so you start to resonate with that brand, but also start to recall it. Ask for feedback. So whenever we are putting pieces of content out there, you can sample that on a small piece of your target audience and see how they respond to it. If we never ask, we never will know if it's going to work or if it's not quite there yet. So by asking for that feedback, we can consistently improve our service offerings and our products through that content for people to read. And then hopefully when we do produce our final copies, more people of our target audience are going to really resonate with it and then say, actually, these people are really good at what they do. Don't use jargon. So too often we get caught up in our own industry or business terms and we forget that the everyday person might not know what they mean. So it is really important when you are writing your pieces of content to try and think of the everyday person who might not know what that term means. It sounds like we have to dumb it down a little bit, but it's just because what you know doesn't mean that somebody else knows that. So be really clear, simple, and precise when you're writing that content. Don't forget to plan. So whenever you are writing content, think about the plan. So think about those goals that we spoke about before, but plan out that piece of content. Think about how many characters you need it to be, what sort of purpose it's for, what are our overall, what is our push point with this piece of content. So plan that all out and then start writing it. And lastly, don't use bad grammar. We need to make sure that we're always spell checking, get somebody else to double check it. We know that we can read something a million times and we may not pick up on it because we've seen the document that many times. Invest in the tools that are available on our computers. So Grammarly is a great one that you can add on as a free Chrome extension tool, and it just picks up any grammar or spelling issues that we may have on our pieces of content. So now we're going to go into how we can write content for blogs specifically. So what we'll start off with first is, what is a blog? So a blog is a short term for weblog. It's basically a piece of written content that began in the 1990s that started as an online journal for individuals to share their thoughts or experiences. Since then, it's grown into something so much more. Anyone who has a website can now have a blog, and they can use it as a way to attract more people to their website rather than just using the content that's already on their site. Really great if you're trying to optimize your site to get more visitors to your site for different purposes, and use those keywords that we may have excess of that we couldn't use on other pages on our site. So why should you blog? So blogs are really good for showing our search engine optimization Google spiders that your website is active. If our website is active and we are posting on there consistently, so for example every month, those Google spiders are going to say that our website is wanting people to go to it, so that they should pay close attention to it and look at how they can get more people to visit your site, creating therefore more backlinks for people to come and visit you. It also creates another link to your site in the sense that you can then share it on social media, you can use it as a term to rank for on Google and get people through to your website that way. And as I said before, it's a way to rank for keywords. So a lot of the time when we are trying to rank for keywords when it comes to search engine optimization, we get stuck in the fact that we can't use every single keyword on every page because we're trying to specifically focus on one per page. So this allows us to still write about that particular keyword, but have it as a blog post. So when we talk about websites later on, we know now that not everybody just comes to our website via our homepage. They can come via a blog post. So if we can still get those people to our website via that blog post using that keyword, we're more likely to retain them clicking through to other pages on our website, which is really important for helping us get our message out there about our business. And most importantly, with a blog post, it drives traffic to your website. So the more people that we have coming to our site, the more the Google spiders are going to agree that this website is active, and they're going to push you higher up in those search engine rankings. So how do we craft the perfect blog? So the first thing to think about is, what are you going to write about when you do your blogs? When you are thinking of your blog post ideas, you can use those keywords that you're trying to rank for. You can also tie in with political issues that are happening, issues that are relevant to your business, or potentially even to the area that you live in right now. For example, COVID being such a topical issue, most businesses who have a blog page on their website had a response to how they are dealing with COVID in the business and made that a particular topic for them to write about, so that it was very clear to their users what was happening within their business without putting it on their actual website, ruining the content that they already had created there, but still address the issue that they needed to address. The other thing to think about when you are crafting that blog post is that tone of voice. So very similar to when we were talking about tone of voice for the overall content, we need to make sure that that tone of voice is very clear even in our blog post article, particularly with these because they can get picked up by different people who might share them on their own social media accounts. We want to make sure that we start off by having our brand voice very strong, because this could be the first time somebody is coming to our business and they may have never heard of us before. So if we have that consistent tone of voice in there, they're going to really understand what our business is about and what we're trying to convey in that voice. Add suitable images to that blog post. So if you're using a blog post that's basically a how-to, use examples of screenshots that relate to what you're writing about. It just helps tie it in for people. And as we know, people are a little bit lazy. So if we can have images there to help back up what we're writing about, it allows them another way to view our blog post, not just from a written perspective. Once you've chosen a topic, think about how you're going to do that. So that's coming into that planning our pieces of blog post out. So we're going to pick our topic. We're then going to create an outline of how we're going to write about that blog post. So we might come up with some different subheadings. We might come up with some questions we may want to ask or answer in that blog post. We might then want to conduct some specific research that ties in with what we're trying to push out there. So some facts and figures to be entwined. And especially if you do already have some facts, just double check that they're correct, because things do change so quickly. We want to make sure that we have the most relevant pieces up there. And with the facts, if you find that things change quite progressively with those facts over time, you can go back into previous blog posts and actually edit those facts and just put a little asterisk saying we've edited and changed these so that they know that they're the most recent up-to-date figures. The most important thing though when you are crafting a blog post is to have a really captivating heading. If we have something that really captures people's attentions and makes them understand what this blog post is about, they're more likely to click on it and want to read that blog post. So think about how you can creatively tie in perhaps the keyword that you're trying to rank for, but in a way that says to people, I want to read this, I want to learn more. So we're going to look at these things now in a little bit more depth. So we're going to start with choosing a topic. So I'm going to go through 10 different dot points that helps us when we're looking at a topic. So the first is looking at collections of content and identifying popular topics. So there are some tools, and I think I've got one in the next slide called BuzzSumo, for example, that you can use, which will allow you to go and search what topics are trending at the moment and why you should use them to write a blog post. Sometimes these can be helpful and they are industry specific, so they can be really great. Other times they might not be as useful because too many people are trying to write about them, which would make it quite hard for you to rank for that particular topic. But if you just wanted to have a voice on that topic, then it would be great to start by looking at some of those popular terms. The second is to look at your core topics on your website. So look at what you've already covered and then think about ways that maybe you could have explained something further in detail, or perhaps you still feel like there's something missing, or you wanted to just share about maybe a new service offering that's potentially coming around. So look at what's on your website and those core topics and how you can branch them out a little bit further. Or if you have a new product, do a little bit of a teaser about that product coming out so that when it then does launch on your website, they know what that product is already about a little bit through that blog post. Third, use that keyword research that we've talked about. Keyword research is ideal for learning what we know people are searching on Google, and then we can tie in when they are searching those terms that our blog post comes up. The fourth is to reverse engineer top keywords and or posts of your competitors. So what we can do is have a look on our competitors' websites and see what they've written about on particular blog post topics, and then say to ourselves, okay, well, we could actually use that as a topic ourselves, but we could write it from a different perspective, or you may even have just a different viewpoint in general. And so you can write your own blog post answering that topic in your own way. 5, use tools to identify common questions in your niche and answer them. So what we like to do with these questions ones is actually ask our audience what they'd like to learn in a blog post topic. So you could do this through social media and just put a post out there saying we'd like to answer some questions of yours in blog posts. So what questions would you like us to answer? And then we could do that through those blog posts, or you could even just do a blog post asking people to send in their questions. It's just a great way to really understand what your audience wants to learn more about from your business. Number 6, brainstorm problems potential customers might have and create tutorial content to solve them. So when we think about our customers, sometimes they have issues and we need to help solve them. So if we make a massive list of all the problems that our customers might have and how our product or our service solves that problem for them, we can then use that as a basis for our blog post topics. And I've got an example of how that works a little bit later on. Number 7, identify experts in your niche you can learn from and interview them. So interviewing blog posts are a really great way for us to have a bit more of a question and answer type blog post. Really good if you're wanting to create a bit more of a lengthy blog post, because we know when we're writing about one individual topic, we can find it quite tiring to keep writing pieces of content. It starts to feel a bit like an essay at school when you just were writing words to write words, where if you're interviewing someone, you're just writing the answers that they've answered to your questions. So it can be a great way to have something a little bit different and unique on your blog page. It's also really good if you can interview people that are standouts in your industry. Maybe they've done something really exciting or something important for your industry. So it'd be a really good one to be able to interview them and help get traffic to your site if they do have a well-known name as well. Number 8, ask your audience what they want to learn about. So very similar to the one that we had before, just tying into that in a different way. Number 9, so look at public support forums or little forums that are popping up on websites and identify the most annoying problems people face and try to solve them. So if we went and had a look at what people type into Google on different forums about how they're having issues, we would start to pick up straight away that, okay, there's this common thread that people are asking the same question and repeat in these forums, and our product and our service can solve them. So why don't we do a blog post around it, so when they then put in that problem into Google next time, we come up as a solution straight away. It's a great way, I guess, to get new people that don't know about our business to come to our website. And number 10, create subtopics for your most popular blog posts. So if you have had a blog post that's done extremely well, think about what that was about and how you did that, but then think about how you could do subtopics off that, whether it be going back and revisiting a year later, whether it be looking at what's going to happen now in the future, all the different things that could come about because of that original blog post. So that's a lot of things and a lot of ways that we can find our different content themes, and some of them started to feel a little bit the same, but you've got a bit of a gist now at the different ways you could brainstorm all of your different content topic ideas. So we've got some tips now for helping you make your blog stand out. So the first is to post consistently. So as I said before, if you can, it's recommended that we post at least once a month. It just shows those Google spiders that our blog posts are going to be active all the time. I know most website people, they tend to get on a roll and they might go for 4 or 5 months and they've posted monthly, and then they may never post again for 2 years. The spiders pick up on that. So we want to try our best to make sure that we're not putting them off. We're just going to always constantly be feeding them. The second thing is to get other people to read over your blog post before they go live. Not only do they pick up spelling or grammatical errors, it also is a great way to test on someone, does the blog post make sense? Does it flow nicely? Does it really answer the question that the person possibly has? Third, use headings. You can use headings to break up your content as well, so don't just have like the one heading at the start. We know people are lazy, we know people are searching for answers to a particular piece straight away. If we use those headings, it helps those people identify what they need to know straight away, and then they can go on with what they need to do next, whether it be contacting you to book an appointment or purchasing your product. Again, simplify it, no jargon in those blog posts, just to get that word count up. Think about who's reading it, make sure that it's ready for them to read and not just somebody else that's in your industry. We don't want to be writing content for our competitors, we're writing it for our target audience. Make it look clean and simple. So there's nothing worse than when you read a blog post and there's just paragraph after paragraph and they're side by side and you're looking at where do I actually start. Have it broken down into simple paragraphs, even use dot points where appropriate, and have images to break it up or have some white space around it and make sure that it just flows really nicely on the eye. The other thing that's really important is to use tags and categories. especially if you are posting quite consistently and you have topics that might come up all the time. If we categorize those or we tag those topics, people can go back and they can search quite easily to find the blog posts that they're looking for. So some things not to do when we're writing a blog post. The first is ramble into paragraphs just to get the word count up. So I've already mentioned that one already, but we do need to make sure that we try and get to the point as quickly as we can. We know people are lazy. We don't want them to have to read all that waffle. We want to be quite specific and to the point. Try not to talk about too many topics at once. Try and focus on just one topic and then use those other topics that you wanted to talk about in separate blog posts. Even if you find yourself doing this and they're only maybe 300 words per blog post, it's better to have them separated out like that than to have it all in one long 2,500 word blog post, because nobody will read it. They're more likely to read one and then click through to the next one to read a little bit more information than having it all in one, because it will just turn people off straight away. Don't use multiple style effects. So if we try and use too much graphically designed things and they're all flashing and jumping out of us, our eyes will get quite distracted and then we will lose the purpose of what we're there for, which is to read the content that we're wanting to learn about. Again, don't keyword stuff your content just for SEO purposes. People will know, they'll read it and they'll see the same sentence or key phrase being brought up and they'll just be like, okay, this isn't actually being used for us users, it's for the Google spider bots. And don't spend all your time learning about how to blog rather than just writing a blog. All you have to do is put a little bit of, pen to paper, as they say, and just get out what you want to say. If we spent all this time researching how do we write a blog post, we probably could have written a blog post in that time. So we'll now look at the ideal lengths that we should have a blog post. So it's said that an ideal length should be the equivalent of 7 minutes, which to me seems quite long if you were thinking about what you could do in 7 minutes. I guess what they're probably looking at is the higher end of the scale here when we look at these keyword lengths, which is the 1,600 words for a blog post. Ideally, if we do want our blog post to really rank on Google and really get those spiders to understand what we're wanting them to learn about with that blog post, then we do need to make sure it's at least 1,600 to 2,000 words, which is where that 7 minutes might come in. But for most of us, we're time poor people, we're never going to write 1,600 to 2,000 words on one particular topic. We're more likely to probably sit around that 300 to 600 word, which is about how much my blog posts are when I typically write them. I know that I write them because that's a good length for me to write, but it's also a good length for the user to read. They're more likely to keep engaged and read the whole thing from top to bottom. I always break it up with different dot points in between and images, like I said before, but just having that 300 to 600 word length is a little bit more achievable for most people. You can write a blog post that's between 75 to 300 words. So that's just great for generating discussion. So really good if you want to use that topic on asking your audience questions and tell them why you want to ask for their questions or you want to ask for their feedback. So that's a really good length for that particular blog post. The 300 to 600, as I said, is a standard blogging length. It's what I would use. It's a good middle ground also for social sharing, so people will generally start to share it on their own social channels because they'll think that other people are willing to read that. 750 words is what they say is ideal for journalism, especially for newspapers. So potentially if a newspaper is resharing an article from their paper, you might find that that's probably going to be in that 750 word count if it's a really strong editorial piece. So these are just some ideal lengths. It's not the absolute, but it's just something to consider when you are writing your blogs. So I've talked about a couple of these tools already, but I just wanted to reiterate some of them. So Grammarly is the tool that's in the top left-hand corner there with the G. That's great for checking your grammar and spelling, which again, we want to make sure we're doing when we're writing a blog post, just to check there are no grammatical errors. My stock photos, if you do get stuck for images and you don't have any, and especially when it comes to those how-to videos or you're trying to describe a particular app, for example, you can go there and you can find stock images to use and you don't have to credit people for those photos because it's been put up there for anybody in the world to use. BuzzSumo, that's the one that I recommended before, where you can go and search different content topics that are popular right now. And Canva. So that can be a really good tool that you can go and use to help create, I guess, some stylized parts to your blog post, whether it be the banner image at the top, or it might be a little bit of a placeholder card in the middle of the blog post. So just a couple of tools to assist you. Once we've had our blog post and we've created it, we need to then decide about what we're going to do with it. So it's all well and great that we have it on our website and we've got set up the SEO potentially for that blog post, but what else can we do with it? So one of the main things that we recommend doing when you've created a blog post is sharing it on your Facebook page. So you'll see in the example behind me, when you do share a web link on a Facebook, it will automatically capture in any images that are on that page and then the link for people to click through. So then you can create a bit more of an exciting hype around what that's about. So a little bit of a tease and encourage people to click through to that website, through to your website to learn more about that particular blog post. It's also really good for internal linking to other blog posts. So if you've got a blog post, as I was saying, on one topic, then you should have another button down the bottom that says, here are some other related topics, or click next to read another blog post. It's just a way of encouraging people to share those blog posts and stay on our websites. The other is to share it in your newsletter. So if you have a email newsletter like MailChimp, for example, then you can share that blog post directly through there for people to click onto and go to your website. The more people we get to read our blog posts, the greater the traffic is on our site, the more people, the more the search engine is going to optimize and say that our site has those links, as I've said before. So really important that we're sharing that blog post once we've posted it. The other thing you can do is check how your blog post is performing. So using Google Analytics, you can go on here and you can look at the data of how many people have read that particular page, what pages they've gone to afterwards, what the bounce rate is, if they've come from Facebook, if you've shared it through there. If you don't know how to understand that data and where to find that information, we have put together a presentation with Rob and he has gone through how to use Google Analytics, so it could be a good place to watch that presentation and then use that information to see how we can check our blog posts. So now we have some examples of blogs. So the first one is looking at how you can create a captivating title. We've then got asking a question in a blog post. So Dr. Digital is our blog post on the Digital Ready website. And a lot of our blog posts start with a question and then Dr. Digital answers them. So as I said, that's a really great way to, I guess, create a topic and then answer specifically to that topic on our blog post. So if you want to see that example in action, you can go check the blog post out on our page, but you can also see this one here that I've just circled so you can see how it works. You'll also see that the content is really easy to read and it has been broken up into different paragraphs that aren't too long so that people can just flow through that content nice and quickly and easily. The other thing you can do, and this is an example of that, is to get people to ask questions about that blog post. So this blog post was an old one from our KingThing website. So we did a bit of one on finding your why using the Simon Sinek concept. And we actually allowed it to have this link here where it said ask us questions on that blog post. If you click the button, it would send us that question via email and then we would come back to you and answer those questions individually. So it's just a different way to, I guess, get your users to engage with that piece of content and take a further action with it. This is an example of using different headings on your blog post to break up that content. So this was a little bit of a lengthy blog post, but by having those different sections, people were able to go through to the headings that they wanted to particularly read about and then read the pieces of paragraphs after that. This example just shows you how you can use that imagery to break up your content. So this one here was an example of a recipe blog, which is quite a common blog these days on websites. So they had pictures of the overall dish and then they broke it down with why they chose that dish, but they also then used photos of each step of that dish. And it just made it a little bit easier for you to consume and to go through and know what step you were up to and what you were trying to overall create. And in this one, I just wanted to show you the examples of how you could use tags and categories. So for this particular blog post, they've used the category of fashion, but then they've tagged beauty into it, because not only are they talking about the fashion, but they've tied in a little bit to why beauty is also important and ties into fashion. So if somebody was to do a search on their particular website and they were looking for fashion, this blog article would come up. But again, if they were looking for beauty, this blog article would come up. So it's really great for categorizing, making it easy for people to find our blog posts. And so that's all we've got on blog posts today. Now, there are so many more things that we could share about it, but I guess the most important thing, the key takeaway that I'd love to have from blog posts, is to actually go out there and start creating them. Until we start actually writing our blog posts, we're not able to really know the capability or the full potential that we could have when we have those on our website. So get creative, get writing, and I can't wait to see what blog posts you all come up with. So we're going to move on to our final section for today, which is writing content for websites. So very similar to some of the things that we've already covered off today through the blog posts, but we're just going to go through about writing your overall content on your website. So the first thing that we probably will do when we're writing website content, once we've identified our tone of voice and our target market, is to look at that keyword research that we've talked about a couple of times now. So if you don't know how to go and do keyword research, I'd recommend going and looking at one of our search engine optimization presentations, or also looking up the free tools such as SEMrush, or even the Google Keyword Planner, and using these to identify what keywords people are searching for when they're looking for your product or service. It's really important we know what keywords that we want to use on our website and for each individual page before we write that content. Otherwise, we tend to find that we write content that doesn't relate to that keyword at all, and so when we go back to slot it in afterwards, it seems a little bit icky and like it doesn't belong. So we want to make sure that it flows quite nicely. So if we do that keyword research up front and then we identify which keywords we want to rank for on what pages, we use that as the basis of our content when we're writing on our website page. When we are doing our content, it's really important to think about the overall user at the end of the day. When we write things, it's all well and great for it to have that keyword information in there, but there's no point having it there if it doesn't make sense to our user. We need it to flow nicely, we need it to make sense, and we want to make sure that they feel something with it. If they're not connecting with it, then it's not the right piece of content for our business. Our call to actions need to be clear on our content. So if you're wanting people to contact you, make sure that they know that that's what you want them to achieve out of that piece of content. If you have your site and it's clear and it's easy to navigate, you're going to find that that content flows a little bit nicely with those call to actions on your page already naturally, but your content will also start to flow with those call to actions throughout. Most importantly though, when you are writing content for those users, think about, does it answer all of the questions they might have when they're coming to my site? So if I have answered a little bit of what they might like to know, but not the full thing, people are going to get quite frustrated. You're often going to get people contacting you, wanting them to find out more information about that. So really make sure that it's all nutted out and put into the content that you're writing on your website page. So when you are writing content for your website, there are a couple of things to really consider. I'm going to go through each of these now. So the first is, what do you offer? So what are you providing, visitors to your website when they come there? So there's no point going to a website page and it just has pretty pictures and you think, wow, that's amazing, but what do they actually do? You need to make sure as soon as they hit that website, they might see a beautiful picture, but then straight away underneath that, there's an introductory paragraph that introduces who you are and what you're trying to sell to them and why you exist. If you do that, people are more likely to continue scrolling through your website and read more of the information that's on there, and then potentially they might buy your product or use your service. So really important that we say to people straight up that this is who we are, this is what we do. Because if we don't do that, people are just going to say, oh, well, that's not what I'm looking for, and they'll click through to another website, which 10 times is normally your competitor, and we don't want that. The next thing is to think about who it's for. We need to make sure that our content is written for our target market. It's written in the same tone of voice. If you need to tailor your message to those people, do it, because it will stand out a little bit better. Again, don't worry about the keywords too much. Just make sure that you're writing it for those people, because they're the ones that are going to be using that site, and they will get frustrated if it doesn't work for them, and they will go to a competitor's site as well. Think about the problem that you're solving for people. So something that I like to do, as I've mentioned a couple of times now when I'm writing content, is I like to think about the problems that I'm solving for people. So what are they currently facing that might have brought them to my site in the first place? You may even have a navigation menu item that is called problems, and you break those problems down and then they click onto it. You write out a bit about what that problem is so that they can really connect with and say, yes, that's the problem I'm facing. And then you come in and you solve it with your product and you solve it with your service. It's such an old but a really important, terminology when it comes to writing content for our business. If we go straight away selling what we have to offer, people will get bored and they'll think, oh, we don't trust you because you're just all about yourselves. You're not really worried about us and what we're feeling right now. Where if we are understanding what they're feeling, understanding the problems that they're facing, and then coming in and saying, well, actually, we can assist you with this, we can work alongside you, you're more likely to get them to stay with you. What's your story? So we need to make sure we are entwining that story into our content on our pages. It's not just about having it on our About page, we want to have it throughout all of the content on our site. So that introductory paragraph that I was talking about before, we need to have a bit of that story, a bit of that essence that makes us us in that introductory, so that it captures people and they say, oh, what's that? What else is their story? What else can I learn about these people? Right down to when you're putting content up of your product, tell a little bit about your story then. Tell them why you created that product. Tell them why that particular ingredient's important for you guys to have in there. What problem is it solving for them by using that, that maybe one of you have faced, and that's why that product was developed. All of those bits of story and all of the different pages will help keep people on your website, because they'll want to learn more about why you guys do what you do. And lastly, think about what's next. So what call to action do you want people to take with that piece of content at the end of the page? So every page that we go to is an opportunity to get them to take an action. And it might be to book now, it might be to call you, but sometimes it might be just to click through to another page on your website. So you need to make sure that that content flows up ready to take them on to that next piece of content. Otherwise, they're more likely to just go off your website and click and say they've seen enough for today. So that's all we have on website content writing. Very similar blog posts and websites and content overall. They all start to flow, it all starts to feel the same. But the most important thing is that if we are consistent, if we write for our target audience, if we think about our end user and what our goals are, we're going to create really good content that captivates people's attention and encourages them to look at purchasing our product or service. I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. If you haven't already, book in your free mentoring session, and we want to make sure we can get in as many of you as possible. So you can book in two ways. You can book on the website at digitalready.tas.gov.au, or you can contact the hotline that is manned 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, and that number is 1800 955 660. And somebody will help you on that line, identify who it's best to work for the needs that you have. So thank you very much for listening.